everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and this is going to be a walkthrough of session 3 and 4, which is what we're going to cover next week. But I always send out a roundup each week. If you didn't get a chance, please look in the announcements section. This is where you'll find these. And if you haven't done so already, please make your settings under your account here. If you go to your account and then you go to notifications, you can actually put in there where you would like your notifications to go and how often you would like to receive those. So I definitely think that you should put in there that you would like to receive these, and then to what email address you would like them sent. And I would say daily or notify me right away, because I send these all the time, and I would like you definitely need these and your feedback that I've given you. So please make sure that you are getting the notifications. Okay, so let me just quickly summarize last week and then what's to forward. So if you look under the announcements, you'll see I sent out a little bit about session 1 and session 2 in the announcements. I don't know how many of you had a chance to watch it. Doesn't look like very many students watched it. I know it's an overwhelming week because it's your first week. So if you haven't had a chance, go back and watch it again. A couple other housekeeping items. Number 1, a lot of students are still, not meeting the deadlines in this class. Initial posts are always due by Wednesday, the response post to a fellow classmate by Friday. And we cover 2 sessions per week. So next week we'll cover session 3 and 4, which means you have an initial post and a response post due for session 3, an initial post and response post due for session 4. So make sure that you understand that. The other thing is a lot of you are just not meeting the requirements for posts in this class. I know under some of your majors, feelings are okay to express, and that's okay. But in this class, unfortunately, everything's factually based. So no I statements, paragraphs, a clear beginning, middle, and end. So here's what you do. You kind of like state the question. Also, we don't need any header information. So at the top, just the question you're answering and then what you're going to do. The system actually captures all the other information. Also, no attachments. I don't know. I think people got confused with what a discussion and an assignment are. Discussions are something completely different than assignments. Assignments are attached. Discussions are put in the reply area. And if you're confused about how to do that, right here, how to submit a discussion post and a reply post to another student is right here. So that's definitely something you want to look up. The other thing is read these 2 documents. Absolutely important. Super duper important. Read these documents, because a lot of you aren't meeting the requirements, and that in there it gives you like a list of things that your post has to have. You can use it kind of as a checklist. It'll help you a little bit. Again, go back and read the requirements for what posts are. This week, don't forget, you still have a quiz due for me by tomorrow night, 11:59, July 12th. And then you also have your first assignment for me due, which is the scientific method assignment. So you have 2 things still due for me by Sunday, 11:59. Now, this one, if you have questions, the walkthroughs here, a couple of people have already submitted to me work, and they didn't watch the video. So they already got a question wrong, and I told them to revise it. Under the experiment scientific method assignment, case study C is not the control group. So make sure you go back and read the video, watch the videos. It'll give you the answer that I want. The other thing is that I'm trying to think what else. Oh, the other thing is Turnitin is not working very well this week. So just submit your assignment. Don't worry about Turnitin. Hopefully we'll have that fixed by next week, because you have another assignment for me due. So hoping that kind of fixes itself through Canvas. Okay, that's enough with housekeeping. Now on to what we're going to cover session 3 and session 4 this week. So again, you'll have an initial post due by Wednesday, 11:59, and a response post due by Friday, 11:59, and then you have your second assignment for me due, where you have to pick an invasive species and write about it. And I give you a walkthrough here, a video walkthrough of my expectations, but the assignment, of course, also lists out everything that I want along with a rubric. So I'm pretty clear on what I want, and if you don't meet those things, then you just don't get that box checked on the rubric. And so make sure you're just checking the boxes. The other thing is that under consumption and waste, you'll have a forum post due and then the quiz. The quiz relates to the chapter reading, so actually just to the PowerPoint, because there's no real chapter in the open resource textbook that goes along with this, so do that. Oh, that brings up, one last housekeeping item. You have to use sources I've given you in this class. You have plenty of information to help you answer the questions in this class. I don't want to see outside stuff. And the reason for that is we used to call that trumping the conversation. That word has a whole new meaning now. But we in academics, we don't want other people to have other information, because then they pull this stuff in and you're like, I don't know where that came from. I didn't see that. I didn't read that. We all have to be privy to the same information to be able to respond back and make educated responses to what your posts are. If you all of a sudden pull something out of thin air and say, well, here's my data. Well, I haven't had a chance to look at that. I don't know who's funding that source. I don't know any of that information. So everything that you need to answer the questions is found within the modules. No outside sources. Also on the midterm and final exam, same gig goes. And the reason for that is a lot of students use CourseHero.com or whatever that is, and I check it often. And if I see posts or answers from Course Hero, you get a 0 for the class and for the midterm final, as well as any other assignment in this class. So I highly suggest you don't use Course Hero, because it's cheating, because I didn't give my copyright information to them. Okay, so again, session 3, ethics, economics, and policy. So we're going to cover the ethics of environmental, the economics of it, and the policy. Here's the PowerPoint, here's the textbook. There's only part of the textbook that relates, and that would be found under the session, what parts relate to this section. Utilitarianism is something that we definitely need to cover, and that's the conservationist point of view to environmental conservation, and that is the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. But there's a lot of issues with utilitarianism, which is who's the greatest amount of people, right? The greatest good for the greatest amount of people. And usually, again, this is where social justice comes into this class. The greatest good for the greatest amount of people is usually for middle to upper class white people. And so that is an issue, because when we think about environmental conservation, we tend to, of course, marginalize the communities that need it most, or access to it. So in Africa, right, women and children are usually marginalized the most, right? Or in the United States, even a lot of injustices, and you'll read about those. Environmental case study in Chester, PA. Most kind of industries or hazardous waste facilities are placed in Chester, PA. And the reason for that is because the community is a marginalized community, and unfortunately individuals in this community have to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. They can't go to the meetings to fight. They don't even know the process. They can't hire lawyers. So what happens is companies move into these neighborhoods, hazardous companies that wouldn't be slated for an upper middle class white community, just point blank. And so this class ties around what's going on in the world right now, or in the United States right now. So that's definitely something you want to look at. Preservationists want hands-off nature, and that comes into play in that Hetch Hetchy Reservoir situation, and I give you some information on that in this module. Pricing the Priceless is a great article. It's a long article, so don't get bogged down by it, but it gives the idea of how we put a price tag on nature. So you're going to say, oh, we can't put a price tag on nature. We all have a price tag. I have a price tag. You have a price tag. Everyone has a price tag. Nature has a price tag. The issue is that it's just not accurate. We use these valuation systems to put price tags on nature. A lot of that deals with contingent valuation and marginal valuation. Contingent valuation is like your willingness to pay for something. So we send out surveys and say, well, what are you willing to spend to protect the polar bear? And you might say, oh, a lot of money, because it's like cuddly and fuzzy and cute, right? But then when we come to your door and say, okay, pay up, you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, I don't have that money. So willingness to pay versus what you actually will pay. And of course, fuzzy creatures get more money, what people are willing to pay versus other things. So that plays a role in that. We discount the future. We say that abusing the environment is worth more now than us saving the environment for the future. I know that sounds crazy, but if you could use something now, you'll get more money out of it than if you wait and hold on to it in the future. Baseball cards are a great example of that. The story of cap and trade is going to tell you, so pricing the price list, one way that we could remedy that using cost benefit analysis is to use cap and trade, but there's a lot of issues with that as well, and this video will tell you about that. I talked to you a little bit about case studies. Oh, this is the other thing, is talking about should we kill animals to save them, and this deals with the situations of giving permits to kill large animals, especially in Africa and in wildlife preserves, and should we? And there's a lot of people on both sides, environmentalists on both sides of the aisle, and so this article is really good. It'll tell you about that. So that is ethics, economics, and policy. The next session we're going to cover is consumption and waste. And of course, this is huge in America. Although our consumption patterns have kind of scaled back due to the COVID-19 situation, but we are ingrained to buy. And that's not just something that came about. It was actually planned and put on to us by our economy, because our economy is driven by the purchasing of goods. It is not a kind of, we're not a production or manufacturing economy. We are more of a consumer economy. And with that comes some problems. And this story of stuff, some things are inaccurate in it, but for the most part, it gives you a really good idea of what the idea of purchasing things and how that came about, and how it drives our kind of our every being in the United States. It's what we're worth, right? What we have, not what we actually are worth inside. And that's a big deal in the United States. And then we have how we can actually remove ourselves. So remember, like single plastic use, we are always on the go in the United States. We use a lot of single plastic. So there's some really good things here. Where your recycled plastic ends up, because we talk about, we'll talk about bottled water later, but all of the stuff that we use is a big issue. And this article here, Consumption Buys Happiness, Evidence from the United States, is a great article. It talks about two things that do buy happiness for us. So it talks about the hedonic treadmill, and then two things that buy happiness for us, which is leisure and vehicle consumption, because it brings about social connectedness. And think about that for a second. What do you remember most, probably from people that have maybe passed away or that you were close with? A lot of times it's not an item, it's actually doing something with them. And so that is what that kind of article talks about. And then of course, what are the environmental costs of all of our consumption, which is we have one planet and we are consuming and throwing away an enormous amount of stuff. And I know it's not easy. Listen, I try and look at what I bring into my home, and what, like, single-use plastic is a big issue in my home, which is like buying stuff in containers and then that stuff gets thrown away. But we're always on the go, and that's a big issue. So I've tried, I'm doing really well trying to use like reusable plastic bags. Like, I've bought these reusable plastic bags. I've tried to buy these things that aren't saran wrap, that go over the top of like bowls and things, so that you can reuse them. Believe me, it's an uphill battle, total uphill battle. But it is something that I know I do, and I really try my best to prevent it from happening. We visited the beach, and I try and have stuff in containers instead of like in tin foil and stuff that you just throw away at the end. It's annoying because you have to wash it all when you come back home, but I try my best to do that. Okay? That was a lot. But hopefully it gives you kind of a synopsis of what we're covering during the week. And I think you'll enjoy the content. Once we settle down, I think you'll enjoy the content of the course. It is a great course, and I always get students who are like, man, this course really is kind of it's stuff that you can apply every day, or that you see going on every day, and at least you'll be educated on it, and you can make an educated stance when someone kind of comes up to talk to you about a social or an environmental issue, because this class will incorporate some social issues that are going on today, especially in the United States, or actually have been going on forever in the United States. So if you have questions, make sure you reach out to me. I do my best to answer your questions during the week. I can set up a Zoom session if you need to. Whatever you need to help you succeed, I'll try and do my best. Have a wonderful week, and don't forget everything that's due. I would set out like a little calendar and write everything down, okay? Have a great week.